I understand a lot of you are probably tired of this subject and you have the attention span of like a hummingbird. So you're probably not like, you're probably a little bit numb at this point to doomsaying about oil inventories. But I promise you that things are, again, it might seem like it's dragging out forever to you, but from a historical time period, they're going to use months rather than years to describe the timeline of the Iran war. And that's exceptional. You know, when you go back and you learn about like the Vietnam War, people usually talk about years, not months. The months are important, but usually they talk about years. They're going to be talking about 2026 month from month when they describe this in the history books, even to like fucking middle schoolers, okay? This is really fast as historical time periods go, all right? Industrial civilization typically does not flag it doesn't death flag itself quite this rapidly. So let's take a look at ExxonMobil's senior VP. Keep in mind that for a bunch of projections that have been made to the future cost of oil, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and other, we'll call them, you know, the money folks, right? The money people, the people whose job it is to touch the money. They do this to the money, right? They have been using relatively optimistic timelines for the reopening of the strait. The fact that the Strait of Hormuz is absolutely fucking not opening now, definitely. Like, it wasn't going to anyway, but now we know for a fact. There's no fucking way. For one, it's too late for it to open by the end of May, because it's June, you know? So, there's that. But even then, some of the more optimistic estimations they've been using for these reports, they indicate they expect the strait to reopen the end of this month. We're dealing with an optimistic time frame when we look at their assessments. So let's look.
Actually, the International Energy Agency said it could take several months before the flow really gets going and prices come down. But the ExxonMobil senior vice president, Neil Chapman, I'm sure you saw what he said to investors on a conference call this week. He said, we're approaching unheard of inventory levels. I mean, really, really low levels. You can debate whether it's going to hit those really low levels in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but once you get to that point, you'll see the price shoot up. So, I mean, the concern here is, I'm sure you must share it, that if a deal isn't struck, we could actually see those significantly higher levels of not just oil prices, but of course, gas prices.
Right. Well, we track inventories every day. We started out with billions of barrels of private and government inventories, and we still are in the billions. And so there's plenty of runway, but also, you know, there's a lot of pressure.
No, we didn't have billions of barrels. What? I think he's referring to the total global private and public inventory of oil. The U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve was not in the billions. That's a complete lie. Okay.
On Iran,
pig-faced freak,
to finally agree to the president's terms. You know, one way to...
Terms?
There's a lot of pressure on Iran to finally agree to the president's terms. You know, one way to think about it is that if you look at the rial, you know, half a dozen years ago, then one would, 4,000 of them would buy $1. Right now, it's something like 1.4 million of them buys it.
The Iranian currency. Well, their inflation.
Okay, so clearly this guy is very, very motivated to not acknowledge how bad things are. Here's a fuller text from the SVP of Exxon at a strategic decisions conference. Commercial inventories of crude oil, of liquids, petroleum, gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, they've all run down. And running down those inventories has mitigated or offset, supplemented by the release of strategic petroleum reserves, which most of the Western countries have done. All that has mitigated the impact. Yet remember, we are down millions of barrels per day because of the closure of the strait. The U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve is only dispersing about 1.2 million barrels per day, and we are running out quickly. We're not the only ones running out, by the way. Japan has one of the largest crude oil inventories in the world. Guess what's been happening to it? So all of the price increases that you've seen, all the scarcity, all the gas prices rising, everything, all of that has been in spite of the fact that the Western world has been burning through its reserves as fast as they ever have. There has never been a depletion of reserves as quick as has been happening. It is being burnt through as fast as is at a historical record. The U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve falls another 8 million barrels in the last week to 357.1 million barrels, the lowest level since early 2024, and 10 million barrels from falling to its lowest level since 1983. So give it another week there. The Japanese crude oil inventory is down 100 million barrels over just 2 months, which is shocking. Again, there is an operational limit to how low you can get on these reserves. You can't just drop to zero and then coast it from there. We're not talking about like a commodity that you can, you don't have it one day, you have it the next day, whatever else. You need enough reserves that you can maintain the reliable distribution of petroleum and petroleum products to everywhere. Can you elaborate on the September floor you were referring to before? We're talking about an estimate provided by JP Morgan, I believe. They were the ones that were estimating this. The hard operational minimum. Let me see if I can find the chart they put. And keep in mind, the operational minimum that they were referring to was based on an optimistic assessment of how things would proceed in the war. Keep that in mind. Operational stress level, operational floor. Yeah, here we go. So you based on the chart here, but this was published May 11th, you hit operational stress levels around 1.6 billion barrels globally, everywhere, in June. September is when you hit the operational floor. Again, the idea is that once you have a low enough, it's like, think of it like water. You know what I mean? Like, it's not enough that you theoretically have enough fresh water in the entire United States to meet the needs of the entire population. You need enough water filling up the pipes and the reservoirs and the water towers to make sure that there's enough water pressure to get the water everywhere that it needs to be. So, like, even if you have enough water theoretically, you might need many, 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 many times more than the daily consumption amount of fresh water in order to make sure everyone's daily needs are met. You need some kind of reserve. You need a floor. You need a bottom line. How long can Trump delay? The Strategic Petroleum Reserve is around 37 weeks of oil left. We will hit the operational floor way before the Strategic Petroleum Reserve runs out. 37 weeks is just how long it will take at current rate of dispersal to reach the floor. But the operational minimum, but only around 20 weeks to the floor of around 150 million barrels. This is only the operational minimum in the context of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We could potentially hit that way, way, way earlier. With buffer, it's 12 to 15 weeks before, oh shit, add a 30-day window to open the Strait of Hormuz. That's 8 weeks-ish for a deal. I think that might even be too optimistic. We're already at the stress level. All this disruption, and we're already seeing, all the disruption that we're seeing, and it's with every Western country burning through their strategic petroleum reserves, and countries like the Philippines and India cutting back how much oil they use, China as well. It's all right, Masaigo. I understand that you would agree with me and my points if I hadn't disparaged the preparedness of the Japanese government. I apologize. I know why you jumped in here. Filthy Gaijin, don't you see? The y-axis betrays your ignorance. We actually have many years more. Our island fortress nation can survive centuries of Western foolishness. No, I know. I understand. Anyway, back to the statement made by the SVP of Exxon. We're approaching unheard of inventory levels. I mean, really, really low levels. You can debate whether that's going to hit these really low levels in 2 or 3 weeks. Once you get to that point, you'll see the price shoot up. I mean, I think dated Brent, most people, well, a model would say dated Brent will shoot up. Once you get that really low inventory level up to $150, $160, the models would tell you that. And then what happens is when the price gets to a certain level, demand destruction brings it back into balance. Prices go so high, it becomes unaffordable. That's what happens. And so we're at that level right now. I think crude being in the sort of $90 to $110 for the last whatever it is, 6 weeks, has really been mitigated by running down inventories. Is this unprecedented in human history? Yes. Do you think we're reaching a point where we have to ration similarly to the 70s? This oil shock is several times larger than the oil shock of the 70s. It can't last forever. So we'll see what happens. And predicting this in the exact timing, it'll always be a challenge. But that's the way we see the picture. We are just refusing to acknowledge it. It's real bad. So even if the Strait opens today, oil will shoot up in 2 to 3 weeks? Yes. It's, again, the hard wall is unavoidable. It's like climate change, where at this point, no matter what, the effects of climate change will be apocalyptic. It's just a matter of, how apocalyptic, There's different degrees of an apocalypse, it doesn't all have to be properly world-ending.
Is higher than ours.
But it also puts a lot of pressure on them. Like the people on fixed incomes and so on are really suffering.
Well, Kevin Hassett, you remain.
And still the Trump administration insists, they insist. Actually, Iran is the one suffering here. No. The battle was lost almost 6 weeks ago. On the plus side, here's Besant telling us the opposite.
President Trump and yourself obviously have been balancing this getting rid of a potential nuclear terrorist with the idea that oil prices and gas prices have to go down before the midterms.
Well, they will. That oil prices, crude, West Texas is down about 25%. It's down about 12% this month. Gasoline prices are down, I think, about 5% now, and they will go back down. We understand that there is a disturbance here, that it's uncomfortable for people, but we're going to get to the other side of that. And I think on the other side, the oil market is going to be very well supplied. The UAE has come out of OPEC. I think we maybe got some permanent demand destruction out in Asia. So I am very confident that the energy prices are going to come down very quickly.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent telling Maria yesterday that gas prices are coming down and will drop further before the midterms. Oil prices this morning are still elevated. Overnight, the U.S. conducting more defensive strikes on Iran as President Trump has yet to announce his final determination on the proposed
Remember, he got pulled out of an interview and looked like he was going to cry on the way back in? Yeah.
peace agreement. The Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, also says that the U.S. could resume battering Iran if necessary, with plenty of arms to unleash an overwhelming arsenal. Energy analysts are now sounding the alarm on oil exports.
This is why I was a bit nervous when gas went down by like 50 cents in my area last week. And this is the reason why I said fascism is innately self-defeating. You know, it implodes. This is a manageable crisis if the American government leads the world in responding rationally to the threat, which would mean, much like we could have done with climate change, a massive rearrangement of our priorities and of our interests and of our spending to accommodate like this new world that we have built. But we are unwilling to do that because we are evil and stupid and denying the existence of the problem in the first place. So we will just hit the wall, you know? On the plus side, the stock market is doing unprecedentedly well. In fact, I believe that the bullish sentiment in the stock market is unmatched at any point in history, save for the run up to the Great Depression and the .com burst. Yeah, but a nuke happened today. Oh, the Anthropic IPO. Yeah. We'll talk about IPOs in a little bit. We got a lot going on. The stock market just did something eerily similar to the .com bubble top in 2000. What a title, man. Just 20 of the S&P 500 members joined the index at a record close on Friday. Only 20? Oh, no. Oh, no. Narrow bull. That's one way of putting it. Christ. All right, hold on. One thing at a time. What does that mean? We'll get to the stock market in a second, okay? Right now we're talking about oil inventories. The gist of it being they're quite bad. They're quite bad. It's not good. Oil prices are up to what? 94 a barrel right now? What are we at right now? Let me check. Brent's at 95 right now, and WTI is at 92.5. Look at that jump from today, man. To a high of what, 95 from, 90? It'll go up. It'll go up more. It'll go up more. All right, hold on. Still too low? Yeah, rationally, the price should probably be closing to 200. Like, it would be better for the future of Western civilization if it was closer to 200. Yeah. But we can't. We won't. We're doing nothing to lower demand before the run up, man. Before the run up. What's a good title for this? We're all gonna die. Ah! Yeah. You got it. Keep your finger on the pulse. Global stocks were at near record highs before the war. The slope of that curve is disturbing. Total global observed inventories. This is more of an oil thing. EU natural gas inventories in percent of full. EU at 40%. Germany at 32. Italy at 58. Oh, I see. They're running out of natural gas. So they're all going to freeze to death in the winter? Man, when AMOC collapses, whoo boy, they're gonna, I've got good news to everyone who's looking forward to the end of the pensioner tyranny in the United Kingdom. Yeah, AMOC's not going to collapse for a while. Till then, we'll just get bad heat bubbles. I think this was the chart that I was looking at, referring to the bullish sentiment in the market, kind of mirroring what we've seen in the run-ups to previous economic disasters. No, because the one that I looked at also had the Great Depression. What was I looking at? Oh yeah, here we go. Expensive valuation period, surpassing .com bubble in the run-up to the Great Depression. Remember, they don't want you to remember this, but you must remember it. The stock market was doing historically well right before the Great Depression. It was booming right before the Great Depression. That's always how it goes. What's the y-axis? Market cap to GDP, average percentile full history. I think it's like a trailing, It's a trailing average of how well the market is doing relative to the gross domestic product of the country. I'm sure the actual like nitty gritty of how they run the numbers is pretty complicated, and I'm not going to pretend that I can just glance at it and understand. But the sentiment that it's referring to is understandable. Why is 2008 not a spike in this graph? Because 2008 was different. 2008 collapsed because of subprime mortgage gambling. It wasn't really like a big stock market bubble. It was more of a housing bubble. But the housing market, the bubble in the housing market isn't as directly reflected in like stock market valuations on average. Yeah, more of a credit collapse than it was. Like the big harm long run from 2008 had more to do with like credit markets and mortgages than it did with the stock market directly. So kind of a different dealio.